Welcome to Block and Order, the show that explores the legal issues facing the world of Web3 and beyond. I'm Kyle Lawrence, and with me, as always, he's the Don Draper to my Roger Sterling, Mr. Moish Peltz.
Hello, Kyle. I think it's time for a martini. What do you think?
Oh, do you have one? That's actually a really great idea. Is it too late?
Great.
I got my scotch right over there. Producer Chris was encouraging me earlier to do it. So
Scotch martini is not going to do the trick, Kyle. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, it's not called a martini.
I know it's not called a martini.
Roger Sterling, I think is probably my favorite TV character of all time, narrowly beating out Tony Soprano, Jimmy McGill, Saul Goodman, and yes, BoJack Horseman. That is actually a great show.
Wow, BoJack Horseman.
Yeah,
Jimmy McGill is there. There you go. That's one of the better on-screen lawyers of all time.
That's true.
Actually, start doing a ranking.
Very, very clever and crafty. That could be a placeholder for a future episode. We can rank TV lawyers, starting with Lionel Hutz.
I think our audience would be much more interested in a ranking of crypto lawyers, and that would get spicy very quickly.
I think you're onto something, Moish.
Us two, of course, being one too. I'm not going to say who.
We're somewhere on the list.
Leave the audience to to their imagination.
Tell us what you think down in the comments below, please, everybody. Well, speaking of crypto lawyers, kicking us off today on Block and Order, everyone's favorite CZ was sentenced to 4 months in prison for failing to implement an effective anti-money laundering program at his cryptocurrency exchange, also known as Binance. Binance was also ordered to pay $4.3 billion in fines and forfeiture, with CZ personally having to pay a $50 million fine. He also stepped down as CEO, but still remains a major stakeholder. The prosecutors had sought a 36-month sentence, so the 4 months is certainly a step down. Moish, what do you think? 4 months, fair, unfair? Where do you land on that?
This seems incredibly generous to me. I got to say, right? The U.S. prosecutors sought a 3-year sentence. He got 4 months. He's paying $50 million in fines, which, I mean, that'd be a lot for you or me, I presume. But
probably not
for CZ, who I presume has billions of dollars in crypto wealth, this is like a traffic ticket.
Yeah.
And he still, I sounds like you just said, has some equity in the company so yeah, I mean, look, he was the figurehead and the founder and CEO and spokesperson of this organization, and he's lost that. And I'm sure that's a huge loss for him, but seems like he gets to spend a few months in the slammer and then walk away and do whatever he wants, which seems like a pretty good upside for him.
Right. What's funny about this is the sort of attention or the public scuttlebutt towards him compared to SBF. And just from an outsider's view, it seems like he was more SBF than SBF was. He really was just trying to cut corners and get Binance as quickly as possible to where it is. It wasn't like he was, I mean, just from my view, deliberately trying to screw everybody over. He was just trying to get his company to be advantageous. I don't know. To me, 4 months seems kind of not unreasonable. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I think that's kind of fair. To be honest.
Look, if you take the story that the DOJ was saying and you take that at face value, it's kind of absurd that he only got 4 months, and even just some of the internal texts about the anti-money laundering program that were unearthed publicly as part of this, just seemed like there was knowledge that they were skirting the law here. So look, there was prison time. This guy was criminally charged and will now be go to jail.
Right.
But probably not deep enough if you take the DOJ saying. I guess on the other hand, if you take what SBF was saying and compare these two, the two sentences seem like completely out of line. So, and now we can even talk about, sentencing coming up in July 29th for Avi Eisenberg, who was convicted of the Mango Markets fraud. And so, he faces up to 20 years in prison. So what do you think? Is how if CZ gets 4 and SBF gets 25, where do you think Avi lands?
I don't know. I think, and I know this is an unpopular opinion, I think this guy's getting a bit of a raw deal. I understand what he did was not perfect. It's one of those things, like, it's not legal, but it's not illegal. He was gaming the system. He took advantage of the system in place. Isn't that what we all try to do in this life? Please don't come after me, DOJ.
Well, Kyle, unfortunately, that's wire commodities and fraud. So it's
them.
unfair, but that's what the jury found, right?
Yeah.
So
I don't know. We'll see what he gets. He's facing up to 20. I think he'll get a couple years.
I think we're looking at single digits there. All right. So the next topic, the company Consensus, parent company of MetaMask, has filed a preemptive complaint against the SEC, alleging an unlawful seizure of authority concerning its operations and the alleged misclassification of Ethereum as a security. This comes after and as part of the lawsuit publicizing of a Wells notice that Consensus received related to potential enforcement action against MetaMask Wallet, which the SEC was arguing is an unregistered securities broker. So Consensus, by filing this lawsuit, is seeking judicial clarity, affirming that one, Ethereum is not security, and that MetaMask is not a broker, and also that staking services do not violate securities law. So Kyle, what do you think? Was this a good tactical move by Consensus to head off the Wells notice by filing a complaint?
Well, Moish, I think this is awesome. Whether or not it turns out to be a great move, it's literally poking the proverbial bear. But this is awesome. It's you can't fire me because I quit. You get a Wells notice, boom, sue the SEC. Make them put their money where their mouth is. It's been no secret that Gary Gensler has been on record saying ETH is not a security. ETH is not a security multiple times, time after time. He's been filmed saying it. He said it in articles endlessly. Now for them, the SEC, to take this position that all these things are violating securities laws for trading Ether, I think is BS. And I love the fact that Consensus is doing this or seeking a declaratory judgment. It may take a while to get there, but put the SEC on the defensive for once. Thank you, Consensus. I love this, and I'm glad to see this happening. Suck it, yeah. SEC.
all joking aside, I agree with you. Right? If the SEC is going to take the position that something is or is not a security, and it affects like an entire market, like take that position publicly, stand behind it, provide your rationale.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now I know they've done that in some lawsuits as the regulation by enforcement, but why not just stand out there and say, here's our position. If you have comments, like comment, well, we can disagree, but here's the position. I think that would be the responsible adult way to do this. And they just won't do that. It's all hidden behind Wells notices that are only public because Consensus here filed a lawsuit, right?
Right. Yeah. And it's good that Consensus, they're trying to leverage the major questions doctrine. We've talked about that on prior episodes. That's the legal principle that restricts federal agencies from going beyond their mandated authority given by Congress, which, I mean, it's, put your political leanings aside. That's what the SEC is really doing here. They don't have the direct authority to do a lot of these things that they're doing, but nobody's stopping them. So they're just sort of acting without a net. I really love the acts here that they've taken. Their general counsel was on Unchained the other day and was talking very openly about it. I encourage people to go listen to that because it was really interesting, their thought process in bringing this lawsuit. It wasn't willy-nilly and it wasn't flippant like I'm sort of, half jokingly making it out to be. They really thought about it, and they're in a good venue for this kind of thing down in Texas, where those courts tend to be a little bit more favorable towards this type of action. They don't like government overreach down there. Let's see if the chickens come.
And they have, speaking of good crypto lawyers, as we were earlier, they have really good attorneys. Bill Savitt, I forget which one is on this case, but and the reality is, if every large crypto organization that receives a Wells notice files a DEC action, I don't know that the SEC has the resources to defend all these cases.
Absolutely.
So it's a huge concern. You think about, well, what if dozens of companies do these? Then maybe that's an effective way to start fighting back, or at least to help develop some regulatory clarity around these issues.
Great point. So next up, Samourai Wallet's been in the news cycle of late. Keon Rodriguez and William Lonergan Hill, founders of the Samourai Wallet, face charges for operating an unlicensed money transmitting business and laundering over $100 million. Rodriguez and Hill are charged with conspiracy to commit money laundering and operating an unlicensed business. They're accused of knowingly facilitating the laundering of criminal proceeds from dark web markets and other illicit activities through their cryptocurrency mixing service. Specifically, the federal agencies, including the IRS CI, which is the criminal investigation, aka the Anton Chigurh federal agencies. We don't give legal advice out here, but when they're looking at you, you have a real problem. Just word to the wise out there.
Anton Chigurh, such a good analogy. There's like
he's just like a shark. He comes for you, and if you encounter him, it's it's pretty much
this is the quiet killer that you do not want to see. If you see Anton Chigurh, you run. If you see IRS CI,
this is bad news.
Retain good counsel.
Yeah. Well, Rodriguez was arrested in the U.S. and Hill was detained in Portugal. Moish, what do you think about these guys? From what you know about the situation, do you think they're in trouble? Do you, putting aside the Anton Chigurh of it all, what do you think is going to happen to these guys?
Well, yeah, look, allegedly the services processed about $2 billion in transactions, which allegedly hid about $100 million in illegal funds, which ended up in either dark web or other illicit activities. Mixing is really tricky, right? We haven't really solved, what the right legal framework should be here, because the reality is, us as U.S. citizens, I think, are owed financial privacy. I think if you have a bank account, you have some sense of privacy that, the public is not going to know where all your crypto goes,
right?
Where all your money goes. And so there has to be some element of, well, if you're just because you're using crypto, every, ATM transactions public doesn't make sense, right? So mixers, and maybe the word mixer is like, we need to rebrand that and find another solution. And I think there's technological solutions, but the reality is like they do allow for criminal activity, and they are misused by bad actors. But the problem is the developers here are developing software, and they're releasing software, and they're gifting their software to the world.
Yeah. And
then they're getting criminally charged for what could be constituted free speech. Now, I think in the complaint, they're saying, well, here are the concrete steps that these people allegedly did to operate a business and to facilitate money laundering, versus like publishing code First Amendment stuff. So that's the line, right? It's like, where are they on that line? What have they done? And is that clear? I mean, like, did they knowingly cross that line?
Well, I would argue yes, for a couple of reasons, if you'll bear with me. For starters, in June of 2022, they were openly inviting Russian oligarchs to use their software. That's one. And in March of 22, when people were like, hey, I think this is a scam, they openly tweeted that they were like not going to change their practices. The two features of their program are called Whirlpool and Ricochet. And what Whirlpool does is it basically just pools all these transactions together so you can't tell where they are. And the other one is Ricochet, not the 1991 underrated Denzel Washington, John Lithgow action thriller, but it allows users to create. Hey, I did. It allows users to build in additional and unnecessary intermediate transactions known as hops to, again, obscure where these things are going. These guys, look, I don't like to play judge, jury, and executioner, and everyone's innocent until proven guilty. Everyone's entitled to a fib, blah, blah, all that. But these guys, it seems like they were doing a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's one of those cases where it you can have good law but bad facts kind of situation.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll see how the case unfolds, and we'll continue to cover on Block and Order.
Yeah, we will.
All right, our next topic, the Yuga Labs, now Yuga Labs project, Moonbirds, has announced on Twitter that's in the process of creating a new digital universe. I believe it's called Valeria. I can't keep track. I love Yuga Labs, but there's a lot going on. It's hard. So as part of this, they announced new 3D avatars and a relaunch of the project, including strategic partnerships and bringing Moonbirds into like the next generation, right? So the problem is, and there's some controversy in the Twitterverse. Is there even an Xverse? Like, what do you call
I think that's an HR violation. You can't say
Let's
that.
move on.
So I think it's still Twitterverse. Yeah.
So, part of the tweet storm they published, and which I, tweeted about on Twitter, is if you've made stuff during the CC0 era, cool. But from now on, you'll need to own a Moonbird to keep doing so. And the problem with that language, and a lot of people caught onto this, was once you release something as CC0, CC0 isn't just like a generic term. It's a very specific license, which is invoked. It's a Creative Commons license. It's a public domain dedication, and it is very famously irrevocable. So by publicly releasing their copyrighted works into the world, there can be no restrictions on anyone else in the universe using those and making derivative works, and etc. So from them saying, well, you need a Moonbird to keep using the CC0 work, does not make sense. Now, I think that sentence is probably, it's their sentence, so I'm not taking it out of context, but it probably was just inartfully written. And I think what they're trying to say is there's a next generation of artwork, and to use that generation of artwork, they will be under commercial license, which will be different from CC0. And I get that, but it was not rolled out very well.
No, doesn't sound like it was. Sort of hot take here. Yuga Labs is sort of acquiring more or less any successful project that's out there. Are they in danger of becoming the Walmart of the world of crypto?
Look, I think it's a very open. The Greg Solano, the CEO, Garga, had a big mea culpa about all the mistakes they've made, culminating in him taking back over the reins as CEO.
Yeah,
I think it's a very valid question as to whether they bit off a bit more than they can chew. But look, that was the vision. That's why they raised all this money, was to build this future world, and that's difficult, and it takes time, and there's going to be ups and downs. I don't think they're out for the count, but
of course not. No.
They're certainly a few years in now with using up, I presume, much more of their runway, and the margins and the margin for error is going to be a lot tighter.
For sure.
So, definitely, like, okay, now they're managing Moonbirds. The acquisition didn't really make sense to me at the time. This rollout doesn't really make sense. I think from the IP perspective, it's difficult to understand, what they're trying to do here. And from my perspective, from like a IP attorney perspective, it's like, well, even if you're creating new Moonbirds, they're relating back to the CC0 Moonbirds.
Right.
And there's such a thin layer. Okay, well, you have a new Moonbird that has commercial rights, but it ties back to an old Moonbird, which has no, CC0. It's like everyone can use it. So what are you getting from an IP perspective here? And I guess maybe that's a question. Like, do owners of Moonbirds even care? Is anyone actually using it for any further commercialization of IP?
Yeah.
Maybe not, but certainly whatever value proposition that relates to the intellectual property value and commercial rights of owning a Moonbird, I think people are right to question that.
Well, I got my Bored Ape shirt on. Can't really see it in this thing, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know who had a more controversial week, them or the Eigen airdrop. But
we're not even doing airdrop meta on this episode.
No, but that's a topic for another day.
That's another. We got to just do we have to focus a whole episode just on how do you launch a token? But,
how do you do it without going to jail?
In 30 seconds.
Well, speaking of going to jail, Moish. Yeah, right, exactly. Everybody's favorite whipping boy, SBF, has been back in the news because he recently reached a settlement with various FTX investors, agreeing to aid them in pursuing legal action against celebrity endorsers of the now defunct cryptocurrency exchange FTX. SBF has agreed to provide testimony and documents to support the investors' litigation efforts against various celebrity promoters and venture capital firms that endorsed FTX. In exchange, he will be released from current and future civil liabilities related to FTX's collapse. To me, that's window dressing, given how much money he's already lost. But I guess every cent helps. Co-defendants like Carolyn Ellison and Gary Wong have also settled with investors. However, major celebrities and several VC firms continue to contest these allegations, reflecting a divided response among the accused parties. Athletes Tom Brady, Stephen Curry, Shaquille O'Neal, Naomi Osaka, who I saw at the U.S. Open a couple years ago, and Shohei Ohtani, who's been in the news a lot lately, as well as supermodel Gisele Bündchen are fighting this lawsuit. Moish, what do you think about these celebrity endorsers being potentially civilly liable for this kind of thing?
Look, they endorsed a crypto exchange that blew up, and there's lots of people that are holding the bag, and they're going after the big pockets. And the big pockets are these very public, very visible, very wealthy athletes and celebrities. So, I get it. I'm sympathetic, but the reality is, they were part of the advertising scheme that got people really excited about this thing, and the plaintiffs are really trying to make the liability stick here. And so I don't think they're going to get out easy. Otherwise, they'd probably already be out.
Yeah, but I mean, Shaquille O'Neal endorses Taco Bell, which, by the way, is ridiculous. Like, to eat Taco Bell and then go play basketball. Although I guess we did that when we were in 8th grade. You eat a chicken parm hero and go to basketball practice. But if somebody gets Taco Bell and is in the bathroom all night, do they get to sue Shaquille O'Neal for that? No.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't think it's look, there's a lot of nuance in celebrity endorsement deals, and a lot of these deals, right, also come with indemnification rights. So the celebrities typically take comfort in, well, I'm doing the deal, but if something happens, the company is going to pay for all the things that go wrong. I'm just coming in and being the spokesperson, and then I leave, and they handle all the legal liability. Unfortunately for them, right, the indemnity is our FTX, and FTX is no longer has the ability to defend them in these lawsuits, right? So it's complicated. I don't think, I think false advertising claims, and here they're saying, hey, FTX is great. Look how wonderful it is. Except for Larry David. Larry David said, crypto's dumb. Don't use FTX. Yeah, and maybe we should all listen to Larry David a little bit more in our lives. Yeah. But I mean, right. I don't think it's just, oh, well, they just talked about it and it's like Taco Bell and we shouldn't have liability against it. I think it's more nuanced than that, obviously.
Right. But if they're less of a celebrity, does that mean there's less exposure? So instead of Tom Brady, if it's DJ Stewart, the first guy on the bench for the Mets, or instead of Gisele Bündchen, it's C. Thomas Howell. Are they not going to get sued because nobody knows who they are?
Yes, because nobody cares and they don't have enough money to pay for a huge.
I just think that's just such a dangerous precedent. Where is that line?
Of course, it's unfair.
Drawn?
Life's unfair. These guys are getting targeted because they're public and have lots of money.
I'm sticking up for the little guy. Tom Brady needs me in his corner because this is unfair. This is almost as unfair as when he got hauled into Congress about deflated footballs, which is the dumbest shit I think I've ever seen.
No, he's from Boston. He needs to stand for his crimes, Kyle. That's enough. And Shea Ohtani, come on, buddy. He's having a rough month. This guy
still hit pretty well. He blasted a home run off the Mets last week.
Who's translating for him now? What's going on? I want to know more about Shea Ohtani.
Just use Google Translate on your phone. It works great.
Moving on to our next topic. There's a lot going on in Hong Kong right now, so this segment is going to talk about them. So first, I want to talk about the ETFs that launched in Hong Kong this past week. There was a Bitcoin ETF as well as Ether ETFs. I actually believe there are multiple in each category. And people were very excited for there to be an alternate forum for these ETFs. These ETFs also had a lot of, I think, some of the beneficial qualities that people were hoping would come out of the US ETFs, including the right to exchange crypto for shares and things like that, right? So they were launched under a different legal regime. There was a lot of benefit to them. People were very excited. And then they launched and crickets. I think they did $11 million in transaction volume the first day, which is a drop in the bucket. So Kyle, what do you think the I don't know if we call it a failure. It's day one. So it's the slow roll launch of these ETFs means.
It's tough to really say. It could be any number of factors that are almost impossible to predict, especially, looking from the outside in. The only thing we have to compare it to is the ETFs here, which when they were approved, it was, yay, retail, but that hasn't happened at all. It's been all institutional. So it could be something like that. I know that in that part of the world, crypto is treated much differently than it is here. So I don't have a better answer for that. It's kind of impossible to really say from here. And plus, the news coming out of Hong Kong is not always as freely given as it is, just being honest. I'm not shot for saying that.
Right. But I mean, tens of millions of dollars versus hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right.
It's orders of magnitude less volume. So, it'll be interesting to see, how the Hong Kong market for these ETFs, evolves, and then also how the US market continues to evolve. And everything's down 10, 20, 30% since,
yeah, surprisingly so. Yeah.
A couple weeks ago. I think it's still up though, since like the ETFs are still up overall. Like if you bought ETF
those are
the US on day one, you're still up, right? But anyways, the other thing that's happening that's interesting in Hong Kong right now is the Securities and Futures Professionals Association has recommended the formation of a self-regulatory committee to allow crypto firms to monitor each other's compliance, basically to set up a self-regulatory compliance regime. This is something you and I have talked about quite a bit about, well, there's a lot going on about what the right regulatory regime should be as legislation. But in the meantime, why don't we find a better baseline for self-regulation, create basically, industry groups where we say, hey, these are the friendly, legal, good guy businesses, and here's the minimum standards to hit if you want to do business on the, and I think this could apply, right, decentrally to, DAOs and DeFi and also to centralized companies, but that really hasn't taken off. I know there's a little bit of like, I think for some token issuance, like standards, things like that, but it's really not taken off yet.
It's true.
So does self-regulation have a role to play in our crypto markets?
It's the kind of thing that gets talked about a lot. It's sort of embedded in the very ethos of why people love crypto. I am very cynical. I don't believe that we can necessarily, govern ourselves in that kind of way. I mean, the analogy I always use is go to a grocery store and the shopping carts don't get returned to the stanchions over there. Like if we can't do that, how are we supposed to govern ourselves? I'm oversimplifying, but I think it can work in theory. The problem is that the bigger players will just sort of try to muscle in and say, well, this is what we need to do because this is what works best for us. We just talked about Yuga Labs. Great company. They do a lot of amazing things, but they kind of tower over everybody else. If they're part of that regulation process, who's to really stop them from implementing measures? I'm not trying to besmirch them or anything like that, but who's to stop them from implementing those kinds of things that benefit them necessarily? Just playing devil's advocate with that.
Look, I think self-regulation is really an underrated avenue for regulatory outlooks that do not rely on U.S. Congress and other dysfunctional organizations. And I think it also gives the industry some agency to say, hey, we're trying to do things the right way.
Yeah.
Here are all the good actors. See, like they're in this group. Everyone else like can fend for. So like, yeah, that can also be really unfair. And if you're not someone that can get into that clique or that group, and it's not this neutral, balanced industry baseline that, I'm kind of imagining in my brain in this optimistic, Disneyland that it is, it could totally fall apart and be useless. Right.
Right.
But I do think that there needs to be more public dialogue about
that's definitely
what
true.
Those standards should be.
Yeah.
And how, and I think like just getting away from some of the really, really large industry players, like maybe smaller kind of bottom up, type of self-regulatory approaches could work here.
Yeah. It's definitely,
if you're a DAO out there and you want to think about this, I'd love to talk to you.
Yeah.
Get some public goods funding to fund this topic.
Yeah.
I love public goods funding, but can't just like wave a magic wand and make it happen.
You can't?
Oh. Well, I think you can. I think you can just walk up to a DAO.
You can, right? I don't know if it works.
Yeah, it could. It's definitely happened before.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Well, Moish, that about wraps it up for this week's edition of Block and Order. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. Please remember to follow us on all our socials. Links are down below in the in the show notes. Also, if there's a particular topic you'd like us to cover, please leave us a comment down below. We love to hear your thoughts. Any feedback and constructive criticism just helps us make the show better. Please remember that this show is meant only for informational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing contained herein is meant to be construed as financial and or legal advice. If you're going to engage in cryptocurrency or take the plunge down the rabbit hole, please consult your own attorney, get your own representatives, and of course, do your own research. Very special thank you to producer Chris, without whom this episode would not be possible. And also remember that just because we discuss certain projects and cryptocurrencies on this show does not represent an endorsement by us of said assets, as well as the fact that Moish and I and the other makers of the show may own some of these assets on their own. That doesn't make us financial wizards or anything like that. Please do not take that as an endorsement. So on behalf of Block and Order, I'm Kyle Lawrence.
I'm Moish Peltz. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.